We're gonna make over $250,000 on the latest industrial building we just bought here in North Carolina. It's an in-place 12 cap that is not projected, not pro forma. It's the 12 cap since the day that we've closed it. And the seller handed us an $80,000 check at closing. Today, I'm going to be walking you through that exact deal. This is something that I've been wanting to do, to sit down with you guys to walk through an exact deal and how you can make over $250,000 on a deal today. If you're new here, my name is Jesse. I'm a commercial real estate investor, entrepreneur, broker, podcast host, you name it. Just kidding. But I buy industrial buildings across North Carolina, and I'm here to help businesses and entrepreneurs do the same thing. Today, like I mentioned, we're gonna be talking about the one that we just bought here in High Point, North Carolina. And I'm not gonna be saying the exact address, but I'm gonna give you as many of the details as I can to help you guys take down your first industrial building. So this deal never hit the market. This is a building that I sourced off market. If you're looking through, basically what you do is you pull a list either from CoStar or Reonomy, tax records, and you cold call them. Basically, you just have somebody skip trace the data to make sure that you are calling accurately people. You can have someone skip trace it for you, or you can use some of these other platforms. Now, CoStar doesn't have exact data. I would still have someone skip trace over top of CoStar to make sure it's accurate, or you could use what I like to use, which is called Terracotta. Terracotta is a really great platform that you can use to call out of as a dialer. It's not necessarily a CRM, but it's something that you can use to pull an exact property, get the property information, add it to your list, call it, it records. It's amazing. Go check out Terracotta. Now, this is a property that I followed up on with way more than once. Usually, we're looking back at all the different deals that we've done, and we've done 7 different industrial deals over the past 2 years, which is just insane. We've really bought more buildings than that, but deal-wise, it's about 7 at this point, and we're truly blessed. But looking back at all those different deals, I've noticed that it's taken about a year to get to all of those deals. And let me explain. When you're cold calling these properties, it's not often that you're gonna find someone on the first dial that says, hey, I'm willing to sell my property. I don't know that I've ever really truly had that. It's something you have to follow with over time and time again. I first cold called this property, I believe, in October 2025. We closed it to about a month ago. And so that's almost 6 or 7 months, which is honestly probably one of the faster ones we've gotten to get closed. Now, let me tell you about how I did that. I cold called this guy, I emailed this guy, I even cold texted this guy, but it wasn't until I texted him did he text me back. Then he knew who I was and he started taking my phone calls. Now, originally the pricing guidance was really high. Wasn't something that we were gonna be able to do. As a broker, my brokerage hat said, let's show this to a few buyers. Let's see if we can get something done here. Well, I showed it to several buyers. Nobody could get it to his price. And I showed him that. I showed him some lowball offers and said, hey, look, I know this isn't where you want to be, but here's the offer. And then state of North Carolina, I have to present it nonetheless. And I really tried to list this property. Well, this guy is very sophisticated and he had brokers that he's worked with in the past, and he was going to have somebody from out of state list it. And I tried to push him on a local guy, but nonetheless decided that we were going to try to go after this ourselves. We tried to get seller financing on this. Wasn't going to work for the guy. He wanted to net a certain amount of money, wanted to sell and move on. And that's totally fine. We're happy to work with that. So in negotiations with this guy, he has a roof on this building that really needs to be replaced. And the seller knows that it needs to be replaced. He had a previous quote from years and years ago that it was going to be like 75 grand or so to replace the roof. So in my head, I'm thinking it's probably going to cost more than 100 grand. And I tried to get 100 grand as seller credit. Well, in order for us to get to a purchase price that we could use and actually take down, we had to accept a seller credit less than what we really wanted to get, but we had an idea. Our idea was basically that we were going to resurface the roof instead of completely replacing it. That was going to save us a lot of money. Now, to be honest, we really didn't have that idea until after we got agreed upon on terms. We just knew that we were getting a good deal. And let me tell you why. So we bought this property for $580,000, including the credit. So that price is in there. $580,000 minus the $80,000 credit. We were netting the seller $500,000 at closing. Now, our idea was to get $580,000 for the property and get an $80,000 check at closing. A seller credit allows you to do that. More on that later. So we're buying the property for $580,000, and the property is 12,000 square foot. So we're buying the property at $48 a foot. Nowadays, you can't build a building for $200, $250 a foot. It has its issues, but we know going in what we're getting into. Before I get too far, I want to talk about the tour. So we had gotten to a point where he wanted $580,000 or net $500,000. And me and my business partner looked at each other like, okay, let's tour the property. Let's see what we're getting into. I want to understand the property from the inside, because more than likely when you're calling these properties that haven't traded in a while, there's not really good solid pictures of the inside. And so with that, you want to see and get your feet in the door, see what's going on with the property, how you can add value to it, where is work going to need to be had, so on and so forth. We walk into this property actually, and the owner is standing there with the tenant, and the tenant already knows that he's selling. I usually don't like this situation because it makes things really awkward, and our intent is not to come in and kick people out. We want to keep tenants in if it makes sense. If they're not paying market, that's a conversation we have to have later, which is also painful and probably one of our least favorite things about commercial real estate. Now, originally we knew the tenant was month to month, which is a great sign for us because we can come in and negotiate the lease that we need in order to buy the property instead of being stuck into a lease long term. At the time, we didn't know exactly what the tenant was paying. We thought they were paying something really low, something below market. I was on an old lease. Well, the owner was in the process of getting him to a new market rent. We asked him to not sign in a lease because we had a specific lease that we wanted to sign, and he knew that we were very serious about the property, so we held off. He wanted to sell the property, right? So he was trying to make his buyer happy. It was at this time that we already knew the tenant was already paying what we wanted. So it was almost a no-brainer. The second we found that out, we were like, okay, we got to put this under contract. Let's negotiate our own lease, make sure we're covered, and we can do all that after closing. Once we close, we get LOIs signed. Like our brains are just moving at this point. Like, oh my gosh, like during the tour, we find out all this information is super good. The property needed a lot of work though, so we had to make sure we got that seller credit. So again, the roof. So we got it under contract at $580. We had a seller credit of $80,000. We had to get a good roof quote for somebody that could actually take this down. So we had a couple roof inspectors, and we always say get 3 quotes. We got a quote over 120 grand. We got a quote close to 100 grand. And then we had a quote from a roofing company that said, you really don't need to replace this roof. It's in good condition. You just need to resurface this or put a TPO roof on top of it. And we elected to go with the TPO roof on top because in North Carolina, the general contracting code allows you to put 2 roofs on a building. And that's mainly a commercial thing. But what you need to know is that we put a roof on top instead of paying 120 grand to put a brand new roof on it. We put a brand new roof on top of the existing roof for 46 grand. That's almost $4 a foot, which is just insane. That gap saves us 30 grand to be able to put into HVACs, plumbing, landscaping of the property, painting the property, and so many other things that this property desperately needs to improve. So here's a mistake that I want to say because we don't get everything right, and sometimes you just have to deal with the cards that you're dealt based on your own actions. So coming out and being truthfully honest, we did not say exactly what we needed to our lender to get what we needed. What I mean is that we were getting a 15% down loan from our lender, and on top of that, we needed a seller credit. Well, we didn't make it super clear that we needed a seller credit instead of a reduction. A reduction just means that you're going to bring more money to the table. The seller is essentially going to sell it to us for 500 grand, and he was going to give us a loan based on 15% down of the 500 grand. I know this is complicated, but basically it was everything to us because we needed that $80,000 in our checking account at closing. The lesson here is to be very upfront with your lenders immediately because we didn't have a ton of time to make sure that this was going to go through. We didn't know if we were going to get approval. We didn't know if this was something the lender could actually really truly do. We knew he could give us 15% down, but we didn't know if he could do 15% down based on the lease, based on everything that the bank can actually do. Very appreciative that the lender was actually able to do that for us. So for those that don't know about banking, you need to know that. So the biggest thing that banks care about is debt coverage ratio, DCR or DSCRs sometimes have it said. So we knew that if we were going to get 15% down, our annual debt service was going to be $40,874. The bank DSCR for what we were getting was 1.6, so there's so much room. For those that don't know, most banks need to see 1.2 to 1.25 for a debt coverage ratio that they're comfortable with. Now, technically the property didn't have that because the property is not leased at the moment. This is the time before we closed, right? So typically what banks want to see is an LOI, which we were able to provide, that the tenant is intending upon signing a lease. The reason that they couldn't sign a lease now is because they couldn't sign it with us because we had asked the seller not to sign a lease. Basically, if you don't own the property, you can't sign a lease. You could do it with a commencement date and stuff like that and get complicated, but we weren't trying to get into that. We like things simple over here. So we had an LOI from the tenant saying he's going to pay us $6 a foot triple net lease. On a 12,000 square foot building, that's paying us $6 grand a month. Our payment a month is $3,400 a month. So 6,000 minus 3,406, and remember it's a triple net lease, so the tenant's paying all the rest of the taxes, insurance, common area maintenance, and stuff on top of that. That's what TICAM means. It's cash flowing $2,594 a month. Our down payment on this property was 87 grand. I want to say we brought about 100 grand to closing with all of the DD items that we needed to do, and we can talk about that in a different video, but essentially you have your inspection, PCA, phase 1 survey, floor plan, pictures, HVAC inspections, plumbing inspections, all this different stuff, closing costs. costs. Closing costs were a little bit higher on this, but we were getting 15% down. So a down payment of 87 grand means that our cash on cash return is like 31%, which is just insane. Here's the fun part. Let's talk about how much money this thing makes. So like I mentioned, this is about a 31% cash on cash return if we hold it. That's cool, but here's what's so different about commercial real estate that you can't do in residential real estate. We're buying this property for 580 grand and it leases at $6 a foot for 12,000 square foot is the size of the building. That means that your NOI per year is $72,000. Now divide that by an 8.5 cap. So just hit your calculator, 72,000 divided by 0.085. That's how you're gonna get your cap rate. Your cap rate is basically the rate of return an investor would likely get in year one of buying this property. So essentially first year you get rate of return. Most investors wanna see about an 8.5 cap or better, depends on the credit tenant. We can talk about that later, but essentially this market is about an 8.5 cap. You're talking about $847,000 on a purchase price on an 8.5 cap on this lease. We bought it for 580 grand. That's a $267,000 split. Now let's say you bought this property and the tenant didn't want to stay. You could sell this to an owner user easily for about 65, 70 bucks a foot. We'll be conservative, $65 a foot. That's 780 grand. It's still a 200 grand split. This is a deal that I would do every single day of the week. It's just so hard to find them. But if you can find them and you can source them, whoever controls the deal controls it all. So go out, raise the money, 87 grand. I know might sound like a lot of money to you guys, but that's really not that much money in the grand scheme of things. You can raise that. That's something that you could get a hard money note for. This is something we could easily have gotten 100% financing on, essentially, between a bank, seller financing, or hard money. I'm gonna be talking in a later video about how we did an industrial building just like this with no money out of pocket. And I want to keep in mind too that our purchase price that I keep mentioning includes spending 80 grand of improvement on the property, and we're still selling it so high. That's the beauty of commercial real estate. You can get into a property like this. These properties are, yes, hard to find, but they're not impossible to find. I find these deals, one or two probably every quarter. Now, am I following up with them all the time? Am I full-time focused on doing this? Yes, but that doesn't mean you can't find one. You can't tell me that 250 grand wouldn't change your life right now. If you found a deal like this and took it down and flipped it, or even $2,500 a month cash flow, that's life-changing, at least for me. One more thing I want to show you guys before I go. So we bought this property for $48 a foot. You do $580,000 divided by 12,000 square foot, $48 a foot. If you can get to a price point on a building, whether it's industrial, retail, office, whatever, and you know for a fact, or at least have a high degree of confidence that you could lease it for $1 a foot more than what you're buying a purchase price. Let me explain. Whatever price per foot that you're buying it from, divided by 10. So for us, it was $48 a foot divided by 10. And if you can lease it higher than that, you have a really good deal. You're gonna have a 10 to 12 cap right here, automatically. I don't have to look at any other underwriting. That's how you can know immediately if you have a good deal in your hands or not. We knew immediately that we had a really good deal in our hands. We just had to figure out how to take it down, put it under contract, and go from there. So that's the entire deal from top to bottom. That's how we want to do deals. If you're a broker and you see a deal that you like, there's no reason you can't take it down. If you know, like I mentioned, if you could take the price per square foot divided by 10 and lease it for at least that, you've got a good deal in your hands. It's worth taking a look at. If you like this and you want more of this, please subscribe, like, comment. I want to make sure I know I'm helping people. I want to help people. And I talk about these weekly. I love getting down in the weeds, talking about the numbers. Again, if this is helpful, please like, subscribe, and look forward to teaching you more about commercial real estate and how commercial real estate can change your life. See you in the next one.